point of view of business in the chamber and what's going on, especially today with everything that's happening in the world and in our community. Here's some information. This is what we're going to be doing. Each candidate is going to introduce themselves, and I set it up alphabetically, so it would not be by first name, so I wouldn't show any preference in the initial questioning. And I think maybe what we should do is we should be rotating as we go. We have scheduled 90 minutes for the whole forum. 1 hour we'll be asking questions that are prepared by the Public Policy Committee. And after that, we're going to have questions that the audience puts up, and they'll be putting that up on the, what are we going to be using again, guys?
Chat. The chat
on
box.
Chat.
Mm-hmm.
So if you put your questions on chat, we'll select the questions and we'll combine questions that are alike in order to get as many questions as possible. We will have a introduction of a minute per candidate because we know the candidates pretty well. And then we will have 90 seconds to answer each question. And we will be asking everyone the same question. So people can compare what the answers are and understand what they are. So after an hour of our moderated questions, we'll turn the questions over to the audience. I would like to introduce Rovi, Lynn, Antonio, and Matt Jacobs, who are my co-chairs of the committee, and they'll be asking a lot of the questions. And I'll be starting with the first question. And what we'll do is Amourence Lee will give her introduction, and then Diane Papan and then Lisa Nash Diaz will give their introduction, and then we'll start the questioning period. Are there any questions?
No.
Okay. Oh, go on.
Hi,
Rovi.
no question, but I just wanted to also add that after we're done with the audience Q&A, each of the candidates will have also another minute for a closing remark.
And again, I want to thank you very much for coming, and I want to thank you all very much, the three of you, for serving. It's difficult to run for office. I know I've done it. It's not fun sometimes. So I understand it's a sacrifice to do public service, especially local public service. And it's great that we have such talent that can come and participate in our community this way. So Amo, would you like to tell us about yourself quickly?
Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you for organizing. Many of you are familiar faces. As you know, I serve as the council liaison to the chamber, and I joined the council in 2019. I've been working alongside you in the business community to build economic resilience and working to keep our community safe and healthy. You know, as you said, this is probably the hardest time to govern in modern history. And this moment, I'm bringing my track record in public policy, my professional training in public health, and I want everyone to know that I'm no stranger to the challenges and the risks and the sacrifices of running a business. I grew up in my mom's small business. I also am a startup founder, and I sold my business to Care.com. And so I understand what the business community is going through. My job on the council is to really ensure that we can all get through this together and that no one will be left behind. And I'm proud to have the support of our Senator Jerry Hill, the Police Officers Association, the Firefighters Association, the Labor Council, and our president of the Downtown Business Association, Luke Cohen.
Okay, thank you. Diane?
The old unmute gets you every time. Good morning. You know, these extraordinary times require experienced leadership. I'm seeking re-election not only because of my public service, but also because of my life experience. I'm a working mom with my own law practice where I represent a lot of small businesses. My husband and I, while we're each running our own businesses, we're raising our teenage daughter who attends our local public high school. I come from a legacy of public service. My dad was in the legislature and my mom started 2 nonprofits for kids in need in memory of my brother who died from a rare illness. To this day, my sister and I run these programs. While on the council, I've served as mayor and on multiple regional boards, including as chair of the Council of Cities and on the Express Lanes Joint Powers Authority for the new express lanes going in on 101. My service has been about fighting for a community that is safe, healthy, and resilient. I believe that our local community really affects our everyday lives far more than all that twisted stuff that's going on in DC. I've been honored to work in the trenches on our most important issues. With COVID, there is certainly much work to be done, especially when it comes to economic resiliency. I'm seeking re-election to continue this important work with a wealth of experience to draw upon.
Thank you very much, Diane. Lisa?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the Chamber for organizing this event. I'm running for San Mateo City Council because I believe my lifetime of business and nonprofit leadership and community service is uniquely suited to this moment. I want to help guide San Mateo through these difficult times and work with each of you to build a better tomorrow together. As a council member, my door will always be open to business to understand your priorities and how best the city can support you. I bring 3 decades of senior business leadership to my candidacy, starting with American Express in Asia, to Visa here in San Mateo, and on to Charles Schwab, E-Trade, Yahoo, and my own consulting business working with startups. I led a global clean water and sanitation nonprofit, and I'm currently the president of San Mateo Library Board, the chair of the Measure S Oversight Committee, and on the board of San Mateo Neighborhood Watch, Rotary Haciendas, Low Income Housing, and Baywoods Homeowner Association. I look forward to working with the Chamber and with each of you. I want to emerge from this dark time with a stronger economy, more resilient businesses, and a city government better suited to support our businesses through whatever change comes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lisa. Now, I'd like to ask, and we'll start with Amo, and we'll keep this order, and then we'll change the order. So each person answers one question and then the other question, and you could be first, second, and third in rotation. And I'll try to keep this figured out so I don't confuse everyone. So it shouldn't be hard. There's only 3. Okay.
Wait,
But the first question.
Alan, can I ask a question? Sorry to interrupt. I just a process question. Are we going to get a little ding or something to give us?
Yes.
Okay. Can we get a hand signal when we're close to time?
Sure.
Like 5 seconds or something like that?
Okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah, hold up your hand, Cheryl, like this.
Okay.
And that'd be good.
Thank you.
And I apologize for the first question because it's my question. And it's something that I'm very concerned with in the community. And I would think that the people running for office has given this some thought, in that our local jurisdictions are going to have to cut budgets and raise revenue. Our sources of tax revenue are going to be hit very seriously. Commercial real estate is going to lose value for a period of time. Sales tax is going down for a period of time. Our businesses are suffering. Right now, we have a $7 million structural deficit in San Mateo. It's, at least we feel it's likely to get worse. And we have a lot of community things to do and a lot of things to support. How would each of you deal with these issues? And I'm looking for an idea from 1,000 feet or 10,000 feet, but I'd like to get your feelings of that because it's been tough being on city council before. it's going to be tougher being on city council in the future because we're going to have a lot of problems to deal with.
I really appreciate the question. So I think from the 10,000, the 20,000 foot level, we need to exercise prudent fiscal management. And what that means in the long term is saving money in the good times so that when we go through the lean years, we have reserves. And I can say that that has been the course, to the credit of all of our city managers before Drew and also with Drew and previous councils. So our city has a demonstrated track record. So going into this crisis, we had an unassigned fund balance of $54 million, in addition to the 20% operating reserve. That has put us in a very strong position. And we pulled the trigger and committed to spending about $20 million to help smooth out the economic volatility. And that has allowed us to make less hard decisions about cuts. So from an operational standpoint, we are looking at doing a 4-pronged strategy to close our $7.8 million structural deficit. And we have switched to an annual budget review process. And so we are monitoring this very carefully. We're also putting a revenue enhancement measure on the ballot this year, which we hope will bring us about $1 million.
Okay, thank you very much. Diane?
Well, thanks for the cheery question, Alan.
Well, I was going to ask your favorite color, but I figured this would.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's not going to be a lot of difference in these answers. We have to be fiscally sustainable. And the way that you achieve that is by tightening your belt. Thus far, we've been able to maintain services because we did set aside a rainy day fund and we have sufficient reserves. The key is to not tap into the reserves so much that you end up with nothing at the end. So our current strategy and budgeting looks like we're going to have to keep tapping until about 2024. And that's including having to satisfy our unfunded pension obligations. So we planned before, we are planning now to be very strategic in how money is spent all along, as you've just heard, a lot of those numbers. And we're going to get through it, but we're only going to get through it if we keep an eye on fiscal sustainability. You can't spend everything, you can't spend what you don't have. On the input side, yes, we will have the, hopefully, the transportation tax that's going to generate about $1 million a year. I've often said that, and granted, this is a voluntary option, but we are sitting in the promised land, and there are a lot of companies around us that still, in spite of COVID, have a lot of cash. And I think it's time that we really work with the private sector to help us out financially, whether it's for infrastructure. Actually, infrastructure is probably the biggest one that they can really help us with.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Diane. Lisa?
Well, I think a lot has been said about maintaining a solid fiscal foundation, which I agree with. So let me add to the discussion and talk about how I have dealt with leading business units through really difficult times in the past and what I'd want to do with San Mateo going forward. As a business leader, I've always tried to gather all the information possible about what's really going on and get input from key stakeholders. Then create a plan that's laser focused on stopping the bleeding and then using fresh thinking to generate new business going forward. This isn't just about cutting, this is about building. Then communicating consistently, openly and empathetically with all my partners so people know what we're doing and we're in it together, and then measuring our impact. We need to know where we are all the time. So bringing it down to a COVID economy, I would keep in touch with all of our San Mateo economic business partners to understand your challenges and your ideas for what we can do to get out of this mess and get going again. And use the power of local government to advocate safe health practices. Because if we don't keep our economy stable and our people healthy, we can't get people back to work. Then thirdly, look at new ideas. We've got public-private partnerships. We've got all sorts of ways we can work together and communicate with the public to create confidence in our economy and get them to come back and build business so we can get more jobs.
Thank you very much. Rovi is going to ask Diane the next question and then go from there. Thank you, Rovi.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you again to the candidates for being in this forum today. I wanted to make a quick pivot from the economy to the issue of housing. Given that I'm from the California Apartment Association, the issues regarding housing development is very near and dear to our organization and for our work in the city. This November, we have 2 ballot measures that deals with housing and development, measures R and W. So we'd like to know, what are your views and your positions on each of the measure, and explain your positioning.
So Measure R and Y. Well, as you know, the City Council came out against Measure Y, and I just don't think that it's the best way to get us to where we need to be. The city took a survey, and we learned from that survey pretty much across the board. People want to see San Mateo and its character remain the same, but they also think that we haven't done enough for, given that we sort of, it seemed like from the survey, we have those goals and it was pretty much across the board. How do you get there? I don't think Measure Y allows us a robust discussion on how best to get there. And that was the reason why I, at least, voted against Measure Y. With respect to Measure R, I have not taken a position one way or the other yet about Measure R. I will say that at a minimum, it allows us to at least explore in the general plan process areas that are very similar to the carve out and study areas that we had sought to explore in the general plan, namely those along the transit corridor and in and about our 3 train stations. So there is opportunity that I see in Measure R that we didn't have in Measure Y. And so let's see what happens. I haven't, as I said, come out one way or the other for Measure R, but I have come out against Measure Y, and it's primarily because it's not going to allow the most robust discussion about how to reach our shared goals.
Thank you.
Rovi?
I believe, Lisa, you're next.
Yep, thank you very much. I look at land use in San Mateo through the lens of expanding our affordable housing options. And as a result, I cannot support either Measure R or Measure Y. I'm concerned that the limits in both measures, particularly with regard to density, would take options off the table for affordable housing that we can't afford to take off right now, and we need every option. We need to look at new ways to create affordable housing, from repurposing potentially commercial real estate if it becomes available as more employees work from home, to looking at how to rezone the Bridgepoint area to reflect the needs of tomorrow. So unlike the stated positions of the other 2 candidates, I am not supporting either position. Measure R, I believe, could theoretically enable more affordable housing because it eliminates height and density limits within the TOD corridor. And developers can pay in lieu fees per affordable unit not built. But current city in lieu fees of $260,000 per unit are designed for fractional units and projects under 10 units. To cover the actual cost, the City Council would either have to double current in lieu fees, or we'd have to go out and spend time and money chasing disappearing public dollars. And I believe that we could, if we were not successful, result in far fewer affordable and inclusionary housing units being built at a much slower rate. But I, like the other candidates, believe that strategies to address big issues like our future should be developed listening to the voice of all of our residents and our businesses. So this should happen as part of our general plan. And that's why I believe it should stay unencumbered by ballot initiatives that could hamper our options to make San Mateo vibrant and diverse. Thank you.
Well, as everyone knows, the council took a position of opposition. I joined my council colleagues in doing so. For me, no on why was the obvious choice. It over 30 years, I believe that it has really set us back, even though it was intended to protect our communities. And so I've been working very proactively to educate the public and support the campaign on No on Why. And so I'm glad to see, Lisa, you've joined the party, and I hope you can convince your supporters as well. In terms of Measure R, I have yet to take a position. I was very concerned that the map for study did not perfectly overlay the general plan update map. And it excluded areas like Bridgepoint. And when I think about land use, I'm thinking about the fiscalization of land, and I'm excluding major areas like Bridgepoint and other commercial zones that I believe are underutilized. For me, presented a challenge to get fully behind this this measure, in addition to just being uncomfortable with ballot box planning in general. So my strong preference is to support our general plan process. However, I do believe that there is an upside to Measure R because it will force growth around transit hubs. And from a sustainability perspective, I think that that's a strong consideration for us in terms of our economic and climate resilience. So I'll leave it there.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Matt.
My turn to, oh. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can.
No? Okay, sorry about that. On to my question, thank you all for the answer on Measure R, Measure Y. I'm sure that's going to be something that comes up many times over the next 6 weeks. But we've talked a little bit about budget, we've talked a little bit about development, but what do you see as the single largest issue facing the city of San Mateo, and how do you think it should be addressed?
Guess that's me going first, correct?
Lisa, yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. I think it's really a question of getting focused on what our top priority should be. We are very, very fortunate in San Mateo to have tremendous financial resources, tremendous diverse community, tremendous resources in every which way. And we're also in California, Silicon Valley. So the opportunity is there. I think it's number one, figuring out what we all should be working on. And then number two, how do we bring everybody along with us? Because if we decide that we want to be the center of the peninsula, then we can bring everyone with us from a health industry perspective, from a financial services perspective. But we can't forget that we have 110,000 residents here, and not everyone is living the dream. So I think we need to make sure that all of our economic development plans have to also take into consideration all the people who are living on the edge or have fallen off the cliff altogether. And we need to make sure all of our economic development plans include them. I do a lot of work with Samaritan House, and I've seen that their clientele has doubled to 15,000 people a month. And they are people of all backgrounds, all types, and they're really, through no fault of their own, dealing with something they never expected to. So I think all of our plans have to look at every segment of our population, not just the numbers, not just what Wall Street says, but how do we make sure that our community stays strong together and we all have the opportunity to advance.
Thank you. I believe Amo is next.
Thank you. For me, I'm laser focused on affordability and housing affordability. And I believe that we can achieve that by building housing of all options at all income levels. For me, it's a very clear path. We're only as strong as the community that we are, the people that make up this community. And where I see our affordability crisis taking a toll is in every single is across every single sector. We are seeing the struggles of our businesses to retain our workforce, including our own city organization. Many of our first responders don't even live in the county of San Mateo. I had 5 teachers leave in 1 year in my son's school. We are seeing people like my sister, who is an ICU nurse, who wants to launch, who wants to root here in San Mateo. She's unable to do so. So it's hurting our schools. It's hurting the essential structures that keep our community vibrant and alive and growing. And when I think back 11 years ago to when I was pregnant and rooted here in San Mateo, chose San Mateo to be our forever home and community, I could only do that because at the time it was affordable. And there's no way that I would be able to be a part of this community. And on the path that we're on, I don't see any possibility for my children to have a future here. And that's what I'm here to change.
Thank you, Emma. Diane?
It's okay. So I'm going to answer this question from a municipality perspective and what municipalities can and can't do. We're not in the housing business. We are providing some housing and we are building on 2 sites that we do happen to own. And those are going to be all 100% affordable, and I'm tremendously proud of those projects. One was 4 years in the making. But for the most part, we can only, and I think really through our general plan process is where we're really going to get down to the nitty gritty of how we can make San Mateo a place where building can happen, and a mixed use kind of building where there is some opportunity for townhome ownership, those sorts of things. I've talked in the past 2 events we've had about the Waters Office Park project, and where we saw older office space coming offline and being replaced with housing. Through the general plan process, we can allow more of that to happen. But for me, if you want to pick the biggest single issue as a municipality, it is going to be fiscal sustainability. And so we are going to be spending, those that are on the city council now and going forward, we're going to be spending an awful lot of time making some really hard decisions. But we'll get through it. And we'll get through it when we're going to be fair, we're going to have some empathy, and we can make this happen. But for me, a lot of my energy, I think, will be focused on fiscal sustainability. The good part is 50% of our revenue comes from property taxes, and that has ended up to be fairly stable right now. Mm-hmm. So we may not be hurting quite as much on the what's coming in level, but you know, taxes are going to be down, sales taxes. So it's tough. And that's, I guess, my focus really is on how do I keep this municipality going and how do we do it from a fiscally responsible standpoint?
Thank you, Diane.
Okay.
Alan, I'll pass it to you.
Okay. I think we start with Diane this time. Am I right? Yes, we are. I am. Probably. Do you feel that local business owners and the business community has received a fair share of attention at City Hall? How can the Chamber and its members make their voice more effective or noticeable in public policy making?
I don't know what you mean by attention, but have they received their fair share of attention? I don't know. I'd like to hear if they didn't, because that's what we're here for. And we will do everything we can to help our small businesses have some fiscal resiliency. You know, when COVID first came in, there was a lot of sort of emergency steps that we took. One of which was we had our economic development, Jennifer Chen, on the phone working with small businesses. Her group made 1,500 calls to small businesses to help them with PPP and anything else that we could do as a city. So there was actual outreach coming from City Hall to small businesses to help them through this time. We gave $400,000 to San Mateo County Strong for small business grants. So that was another big one that we took on. Let me see, I had notes because I thought this might be coming. What were the other ones that we did? We had San Mateo Strong. Oh, we developed parklets so that we could support our small businesses in the retail areas. Let's see what else. So there was emergency communications. There was the 400,000 to San Mateo Strong. There was the parklets. We're doing everything we can from an emergency perspective, and then we will look at it from a longevity resiliency perspective. We'll do everything we can. That's what we're here for. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay. I think it's Lisa.
Okay, great, thank you. Alan, I took your question to mean, how can the chamber be a more effective voice for business in San Mateo and be more effective and influential in developing public policy with the city? So in that regard, I think that, while I am not sitting every week on city council yet, working with the chamber, what I would do is make sure that there are regular established meetings, advisory meetings between the city and the chamber to understand on a regular basis, what are the issues, what are the changes, what are the ideas the chamber has, and how can the city help? And similarly, from the city's perspective, what is the city seeing? How do they think that the chamber can help together to make something better? I also think that by demonstrating some examples of the public-private partnership between the city and the chamber, we can raise the influence and the voice of the chamber as really the representative of all the businesses here. If the small businesses see that the chamber and the city are working closely together and things that can be measured are happening, then there's going to be that much more influence going down the road. I would also recommend, if it isn't already happening, that there be a quarterly meeting between the chamber and city council staff to review progress made and look at where we go. So I think that's the opportunity to start to have greater influence in public policy and carry it back to the businesses.
Amo?
Well, I think that from where I said, being very deeply involved, attending the meetings for the chamber and also DSMA, my impression is that that public-private partnership exists and is very alive and well and strong. And the fact that we have taken so many steps, as Councilmember Papan outlined, I think is a testament to that strength. Where I see weakness is really in the structure of the chamber being propped up by membership fees, and more so than ever, I think that the fiscal sustainability and business model of the chamber and DSMA has come under threat. And we've seen this umbrella organization and the support that you provide really come to a crossroads of existence and survival. And that is scary. And so I think that, looking at the financial model that drives your service to our business community and how vulnerable it is in this time is of grave concern. And I wonder if there are ways that we can formalize our conversations around economic development. I know that there are other cities on the peninsula that have economic development commissions that can take a long view and a strategic long-term view, and also get more granular and maybe focus programmatically in terms of where the city can support and resource your efforts. And so I think that there probably are structures that we can create to better support this relationship. But on the ground, from what I see and the tremendous work that Jennifer does, there's a lot to work with already.
Okay. Matt, I think you're up.
Okay. Great. So We've seen a lot of change during COVID-19. Obviously, I have working for a medical center, but I think COVID-19 has impacted every piece of our lives at this point. And one of the things that we've been seeing in the Bay Area is we've started to see kind of a mass exodus of people due to the high cost of living, and also people looking to get more space. So moving away from the townhome model or the condominium model to find single family homes and more in places that they can afford while they're working from home. How will this trend of movement change the face of San Mateo, and how do you think the city needs to adapt to this? And I'll start with ammo this time.
Thank you for managing the order. I'm not managing it, so I'll wait for you to call on me. Yes, we are seeing an exodus. There's never been more great furniture available on Craigslist than this moment. So, but in all seriousness, we don't know. We don't have a crystal ball in terms of how this will impact us in the long view. I feel like in the dawn of our ability with the internet to work remotely, it will reconfigure our use of commercial space and the demand for commercial space. Potentially, like our own city is looking at potentially consolidating some of our office space. And I think that there needs to be some changes. I mean, if we're looking at airborne contagious viruses in this future, co-working spaces, open air spaces will need to change. I do think that there are short-term changes happening, and that hasn't necessarily been factored into the RENA projections. We have not ratcheted down or factored in our regional housing goals. But I do think that we need to keep eyes on it, and there are obviously market checks and balances. We're not going to be overbuilding, and at this point we're in such a deficit. There's no chance that we will be that we can underbuild because we're still in such high demand for housing.
Thank you, Diane. Lisa.
No, that was ammo.
Oh, sorry, Ammo. I apologize. Thank you, Ammo.
I think get
Lisa.
confused.
I know I shouldn't get confused like that. Just, kid was yelling at me. I apologize.
Okay, so over to me, right? Okay.
Yes.
So I think the biggest thing, and we were talking about this before the session even started this morning, is we don't know what's going to be happening in the next 6 months, the next 12 months, just like we certainly didn't know that COVID was going to hit us. But what we can do is look at the trends, as you suggested, that there will be people leaving, people working from home, and how do we readjust our community? I think one of the things that is very positive about this, and there are a couple of very small positive moments of all of this, is that with people working more at home, there's more time for family, there's more time for community, and there's frankly less traffic. The one thing I always used to hear from people when I talked to them was traffic is the biggest problem in San Mateo, or it's one of the biggest. And now that's not the case. So rather than going back to the old normal, how do we make sure that that doesn't come back? And I think working with businesses, they're already making the decisions to have their employees work remotely is a good thing. It will reduce air pollution, which we certainly need given the smoke and the fires. But we need to take those opportunities and use them. I think in terms of looking at what our businesses need, we really need to recognize there's going to be so much more online activity. There already is. And so how do we help our businesses who aren't already online maneuver to being online and being good? How do we bring them together so that they can all be really viable? And then what do we do to get people to come downtown? I mean, Redwood City did valet parking when they were in the middle of construction. That's a very tactical idea, but I think we need to use all the resources of the city to help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Diane.
So I don't have an answer. I think we do need to look at trends. I think that's super, super important because none of us thought we would be here. It is that I think you will, if I had a crystal ball, I think that there will be less of demand on office space. I think that's one I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's going to be pretty prevalent post-COVID. It was already that way kind of leading up to COVID, especially with the older office space. So I think that's a trend that's going to continue. I think retail that's not being fully utilized, that's probably a pretty safe trend as well. When we look at our own city, certainly out at the Bridgepoint area, that's one we're going to need to take a look at. So I think housing is going to continue to be a demand. Concur, it may not be quite as strong. We have some making up to do, so perhaps COVID allows us an opportunity to do some more makeup effectively. It is true, nobody knows what our regional housing needs will be, the assessment as it comes. We all know that San Diego, Los Angeles have already had theirs, and they've been double what they were 8 years ago. And it's anybody's guess right now as to how it's going to end up in our area and what our RENA numbers will be. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But I think some of the trends that I see is older office space is not going to be as popular anymore. And likewise for some of the retail. And it may be the perfect opportunity for us to find some other areas where we're going to do some housing. So that's kind of, if I had a crystal ball, that's where I'm headed. Let's keep this on tape and you can check back in 2 years and see if our predictions were right.
Well, we are recording, so that could be fun.
That's a good idea.
No, it's not. I don't want to be wrong. No, I'm kidding.
I'll pass this over to Rovi.
Thank you. So while we're predicting what's going to happen next, let's fast forward to past November after election. Let's start with January 1st, 2021. Two of you are in City Council. What are your 3 priorities you're going to take on?
Am I the first one? I'm not sure. Yes? Okay.
Lisa, yes, you are.
Okay, thank you very much, Rovi. So my top 3 priorities are, first off, to revitalize our economy. I think that is absolutely central to everything we do. But in order to do that, we have to stabilize our health situation, as I talked about before. Because if we haven't stabilized COVID and people don't feel some confidence in going out, then they're not going to go generate demand that will help our businesses come back. We also need to help our businesses, as I mentioned, convert to a COVID-19 economy. And that's very important. So that is where we generate demand so we don't have to keep cutting. Number 2, affordable housing, absolutely. We need to expand it. We need to look at all the interesting options that are happening. I really think some of the commercial space may be able to be converted to affordable housing, and I'm interested in looking at that. And then number 3, how do we continue to keep San Mateo safe? And when I say safe, it's a very broad definition. It's protecting our essential services. It's keeping our fiscal foundation strong and planning as to how to rebuild it. It's looking at how do we keep our community healthy. And it's really keeping us as a foundation together. So I think revitalizing the community, expanding affordable housing options, and keeping San Mateo safe are what I would focus on.
Amourence, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I am counting on you to call on me because I'm not tracking who's next. So every year the council puts forward our priorities, and we go through an annual priority setting session called the Blue Skies Workshop, and then our priorities are adopted into the work plan. And so you know, a lot of our priorities, I believe, will carry over in terms of you know, what we can actually accomplish in this next year. And I think that, you know, I think I've laid out, you know, the big 20,000 foot level vision, but what we can actually do given our strapped resources. I mean, our staff is working incredibly hard to run the city on top of responding to COVID, and all of the enhanced programs and responses and efforts that the city has driven has been just added work, right? There was no extra capacity or resources. We're squeezing the balloon. It's one, we have one budget, and we're all feeling really pinched. In terms of what we can actually accomplish in the next year, I think we need to stay the course with eyes really close to the ground for our fiscal management, and really understand where we are versus where we predicted we would be. Housing, as I said, building all levels of affordability and all economic, at all income levels. And then my other goal, I'll just say, is we're doing a wastewater treatment plant. I would love to see us do recycled water.
So I guess
Diane?
Thank you, Diane.
So COVID's probably still going to be with us in January. So for me, it's going to be safety, safety, safety as it relates to COVID. We will do everything we can as a city to keep our citizens protected. We know that the mask is our strongest chance of maintaining vitality. So we're going to continue on with enforcing the wearing of masks, not enforcing the wearing of masks, but encouraging the wearing of masks so that we're all safe and we're all protected. Outside of that, so let's pretend that COVID didn't exist. Let me give you my three that I'm really sort of focused on. Obviously, updating the general plan, huge for our city. So that's a big one that I would be focusing on. I mentioned the other night, I said, somebody was talking about, well, did we have sufficient outreach for the general plan? And we can always do better. And I will tell you that I would encourage the entire city council to go door to door, get as much input as we possibly can on the general plan. So that's where I would be coming with on that. The other one, of course, is budget and economic vitality. As you know, we're facing almost an $8 million structural deficit. We have $250 million in unfunded pension obligations. We got to get creative. And we will do so, and we still want to maintain services. So we're going to work hard at that. And then the third, of course, for me, it's always been infrastructure. You know, when I ran last time, I wanted to make sewer sexy. So I'm all about infrastructure. We're in the middle of our wastewater treatment plant. It's going well in spite of COVID. I'm enormously proud of that. We got to resurface our streets, keep as many of them as green as possible so that we really are, taking runoff and watering plants, that sort of thing. The other one is our parks. We have a lot of rec centers that need a lot of attention. So let's see what we can do with our limited budget. Sorry to run over.
Okay. I have the next question. And I believe the next question, we're going to start with Amo. And the question is, what's your position on Prop 15? And how will you handle the impending loss of revenue, and this is a little redundant, from commercial real estate rental reductions? Because real estate rent affects income, and that affects the value of a building. So Prop 15 just adds to that, perhaps. So what's your feeling on that? Amo?
Yes. Well, I have taken a position of support for Prop 15, and the reason that I do that is because it really brings parity to the taxing structure nationally. So so we know that that California has really suffered in terms of our financing for and funding for schools. How many years ago? I mean, we were at the top of the nation per pupil spending, and now we're at the bottom. And one of the most important investments that we can make is in our own children and our public education. And I really do see Prop 15 being structured in a way that that protects small businesses and really goes after the very large the very large businesses like Chevron. So the actual impact will be very focused on large businesses and commercial land owners that that won't touch the vast majority of our smaller commercial landowners. So that is that's my rationale. I believe that we need to resource our schools. I don't see a significant negative impact, and I think that the structures to the bill itself have been very protective and supportive of our small landowners.
Okay, Diane?
So I'm gonna date myself, but I remember a time before Prop 13, and I remember what our schools were like, and they were top in the country. I'm even gonna boast that I'm a product of that time in our public schools. Splitting the role between commercial and residential properties is a change that can definitely make a difference in our public schools. So conceptually, I'm for it. My reservation about Prop 15 is the initiative process may not have allowed all of the stakeholders to have a full say in how it should, what the inner workings of it are. For example, is a $3 million valuation too low a threshold? You know, in California, we have very high property values. Will landlords who rent to small businesses just end up passing along the increased cost to their small business tenants who are, let's face it, feeling tremendously squeezed right now? You know, I had envisioned a split role that was more focused on the big guys, like a Chevron, for example, who have big tall rises in downtown. So conceptually, I'm certainly for the split role. I'm just wondering if this version is the best version. So I don't know at this point. I'm taking it all into account, but gosh, I do remember the days before Prop 13 when we had the top schools in the nation. So let's see what happens. Let's see what happens.
Okay,
And
Lisa.
sure, let me finish out. Yeah, I started when Prop 15 first came up thinking, of course, this makes all the sense in the world for all the reasons that both Emma and Diane have said. And conceptually, I'm still in favor of Prop 15. But where I've been placing my thoughts are really with the small businesses. As I talk to more and more small businesses, and they talk about what they believe the impact of Prop 15 will be to them, because they believe that the landlords will pass down the rents, and they really can't see how they're going to make a go of it. I'm in the middle of a really difficult thought process right now. So I am not yet at a decision, but I believe that we do need to fix the deficit and I don't believe that Prop 13, most people who voted for Prop 13 were expecting it to apply to everyone, both commercial and individual. So I am talking to people, I am researching, and I have not made a decision yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Roby, I think we have a mistake here in the questions where we're duplicating it. Matt, I think you ought to jump to number 9.
I'm planning on it.
I think that's a great question.
I think so too, especially as we're bumping up against the hour here, and we should take a look at the chats.
And 9's a very important question.
Exactly. So there's a perception that the city takes a long time to issue permits or respond to the needs of business.
Oh my God.
I've never heard that before. I've never heard of a permit taking more than a day. How will you champion good government reforms and efficiencies to ensure government is responsive and can get back to these developments in a timely manner?
Who is?
And so, sorry, I apologize. I believe you're first on this one, Lisa.
Okay, thank you, Matt. So one of the things that I've actually noticed during COVID is that the introduction of online tools to get building permits and the like has really increased the general satisfaction with the process, even if the steps haven't changed. So number one, I would look at what are all the technology tools we can use to try and get rid of the inefficiency and bring people together. I, as a homeowner, went through a renovation of our home, and I was down at the building counter almost every day, and I can only imagine on the business and commercial side, how much longer it takes. But I think that really what I would look to do is convene a task force of key commercial, key small business, and perhaps key residential and developers to say where are the areas of biggest pain and what suggestions do you specifically have for improving, and then run it against what the city has to do with all of its requirements, what the city has to do in terms of responsibility to residents. And I've always found that by bringing diverse groups of people together and saying, let's focus on this one problem, you get answers and ideas that you wouldn't normally get. And an idea from one segment might go with another, and combined, there's a really interesting new solution. But I do believe that we absolutely need to set standards to reduce, and then we have to measure them. Because if you measure something, it's amazing how it improves. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. We'll go with Diane next.
So community development has recently really updated its technology. We have online permitting, we have virtual inspections, we have electronic plan review. So there, I mean, when I say recently, I'm talking like the last 2 months. So I concur that there were inefficiencies before. I think we're really up and running. I'd like to see, to dovetail a little bit on what Lisa just said, let's see where we are now. Let's get the feedback and let's see how well it's working. We've heard that the turnaround time has increased. I mean, it has decreased, sorry. The turnaround has been better. So we got to see where we are, but I concur that there were problems before. I would like to answer this question by saying, we heard you, and we did use technology to enhance a lot of our online services so that you don't have to be down at City Hall every day, and we can have faster turnaround times. So we'll evaluate it and see where we are, but you're right, City Hall, I like the form of the question, because City Hall should not be an impediment to either doing work at your home or allowing businesses to do tenant improvements, especially like office space. So if it doesn't happen, I want to hear about it, certainly, and perhaps we need more of a structural way that we hear about it. And if that's, regular meetings with the chamber about it, or that's always, on the agenda, whatever it takes, we want to be responsive. We don't need to be an impediment to business. It does nobody any good.
Thank you, Diane. I'll pass this over to Emma. Before I do, Diane, I'm going to have to talk to you online and tell you a story about another city, not San Mateo, where we did have issues with putting in a new mammography machines. So I will tell you how that played out and let you know what ideas I can offer for that. So thank you there. And Emma?
Thank you. So I do concur that there have been many important streamlined efficiencies that we found through enhanced technology, and I hope that will move the needle. But I also agree. I mean that we are constrained by resources, and we're never fast enough, right? And so I was just talking to a business owner that's been waiting almost 3 months for a sign update to be approved and permitted, so on a building. And so I do absolutely agree that there are opportunities for improvement. Coming from an organizational development background, I think about this in terms of, how do we hire and retain excellent leadership organizationally that can drive innovation, right? We recently lost one of the most stellar planners that we've ever had, our director of community development, and she was really the one spearheading this. And I see us having very strong leadership. Today, we are a very healthy organization, and I think that I think under Drew's leadership, we have encouraged things like collaboration between departments, and then also from the other side, I see us doing things like updating codes, going through the general plan process, and making sure that we're supporting form-based codes, that we're that we're really optimizing and finding efficiencies in the process, and also in our big vision and picture.
Thank you, Amo. Alan, you were chuckling there for a moment. Everything okay?
Yeah, everything's fine. I just look at the 7 years of my life it took me to get Station Park Green approved. It was quite a process, and I hear those stories from a lot of developers. So anything we can do to, and this is an advertisement, anything we can do to help that is going to get housing dealt with faster. And and personnel change, when you have a good person in charge, as Amo said, we had a great person in charge who was really moving things forward. That doesn't help, but there's nothing we can do about that. That's just the state of life, especially these days. Let me ask a wrap-up question. Oh, who starts now? Who begins this? I think, is it
Diane.
Lisa?
It's Diane.
It's Diane. Okay,
Yeah.
Diane. Oh, okay, Diane. This is a wrap-up question, but we have lots of questions. But the wrap-up question is, how do you envision economic recovery taking place in San Mateo and ensuring that small business can remain or survive under this unforeseen economic climate? What ideas do you have to help that out?
Could you be more general?
I'm trying to be general. Thank you. I could give you specifics. I give you specifics because when I walk around town, for some reason, people tell me all their problems, but you don't want to hear that.
Well, so you got to look at it from different points of view. I certainly think that if the federal government gets its act together with respect to the HEROES Act, people are going to be helped. There's not a lot of money, obviously, at the city level for us to be able to help financially a lot of our small businesses. What I think we can do, though, first of all, we're going to white knuckle it for a long time. Let's get that out there. But I really think that we need to stay business friendly. If that means that we are spending our money to make sure that our streets are maintained, or the downtown looks good, or that we can enhance the permitting process, especially for developers. And thank you for Station Park Green, by the way. If those are the things that I think a municipality can do to be business friendly and to make sure that we at least get the framework or the groundwork so that we allow businesses to grow. And as I mentioned in my last answer, so that we're not an impediment. But we don't actually have, dollars that we could, I wish we did, other than the 400 grand that we did for small business grants. There's not a lot financially that we can do, but we can spend our money, we can spend it smartly so that we do maintain a business-friendly environment. The park list was just one way that we did that. So let's continue to work together. We're going to have to continue to collaborate. I don't have all the answers, but I don't want the city to be an impediment. And if it is, we need to hear about it and we need to fix it.
Lisa?
Okay, thank you. So I think there are a couple of ways that this can happen. We have to do all the things about streamlining regulations, making sure fees that aren't necessary get waived. All of that is just base foundational work that has to get done, and very important base foundational work. But I think one thing, and I keep coming back to this opportunity we have for a new normal, we have the opportunity to come together, the government, the city government, and businesses behind an idea. And whether it is positioning San Mateo as the financial services center of the Mid-Peninsula, or whether it's all about we are the heart of the peninsula. I think bringing it together, and this is me as a marketer coming out, people know that there's a lot in San Mateo, but they don't really understand what's so special. There's a lot going on, but what is it? I think we need to identify it. I think we need to brand ourselves, and I think the city needs to get behind small business, large business, medium business to support it. And separately, I think we need to continue to convene a group of businesses through the chamber would be a great way to do it, and say, what are the ideas you have? Because what I've always found is in the middle of economic difficulty, leadership can say, here are the ideas I have, but if you just ask the people who are doing the work every day, they've got 100 other ideas that we haven't heard of. So I think it's really continued idea generation, figuring out what's the best couple ideas, and then getting behind them with citywide resources to push economic recovery together and show residents as well as business why this is a good thing. Thank you.
Amo, your turn.
There's a lot, so I'm gonna forgive the bullet points, but I think that when we formed the economic development task force, which was multilingual, we helped businesses. Working in alongside the chamber, alongside the SMA, we helped those business owners avail themselves of the PPP program. 33% of our total businesses were able to get PPP loans. That's $240 million. And that represents 24,000 jobs that have been saved. That's a very concrete thing where we have supported in partnership our businesses very directly during this crisis. The city has funded and approved projects that will create green jobs. So our investment in infrastructure will help revitalize our economy by creating jobs. We, as Councilmember Papan talked about the San Mateo Strong Fund and the grant program. I personally have been working very hard on the issue of childcare. We know that if you don't have childcare, businesses cannot get back to business because you don't have a workforce. So I worked to create a regional $2 million childcare fund, which has provided grants to our childcare businesses so that they can stay afloat. The outdoor dining program, as was mentioned, 29,000 square feet of outdoor dining space. And I think that, from a public health perspective, we also have a really important role in supporting tactical things like COVID testing. And San Mateo will be opening a mobile testing site at the King Center. We know that we can't move through the color system, right, the new state color system, without key things like testing.
Thank you very much, Amo. I'm not seeing that many questions coming up. Go on. Do you have something for us, Roby?
I do. Given that we started the forum talking about budget deficits and how to balance budget, I kind of want to close the circle on perhaps how to do that and how to address that. So we know that the city is facing some structural budget deficits. And of course, we have a ballot measure that's on the ballot this November that may address how to close that gap. So what I want to ask the candidates is, what other budget closing revenue measures do you support? Because we know that the city can, will be looking at how to fund infrastructure projects, how to fund some social programs, but the question is always who pays? So if you have to find a revenue measure out there through the ballot box, what would be your top revenue generating measure that you would support, and which ones would you not?
And who should start the questioning? Who should it start answering?
I think we started with Diane last. So if I have this right, it would be Amourence?
Lisa.
Well, Amo.
I'm sorry, you're right. We started with, yeah, so Lisa would be next. Sorry, thank you. Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you for keeping us straight. So I think initially, here's the way I'd sort of look at revenue enhancements and evaluating them. Number one, I would look to have equitable distribution of contribution across residential, business, and non-local sectors. So not dinging one particular area with everything. Number two, the flexibility of the funding mechanism to adjust to changing economic conditions. Because as we all know, 6 months from now may be very different than now. So how flexible is that funding mechanism? Number three, prioritizing funding mechanisms where payers can adjust their purchasing patterns to accommodate it. And then number four, encouragement of long-term business and residential ownership. Because at the end of the day, we really need to make sure that our businesses stay in San Mateo, that our homeowners, that everyone else stays with us and grows with us. So the transient occupancy tax was my number one. It is on the ballot, and so hopefully that will help fill the $1 million gap that city staff has identified. I think the next would be some type of utility user tax, because once again, that goes toward people using things. And then I think probably maybe looking at specific fees for services and how do we adjust them to really try and generate revenue without overly burdening the user.
Ammo.
Okay. Ammo?
Yes, thank you. So I mean, I obviously support Measure W. we put it on the ballot, and I hope everyone will vote for it. At this point, that's the only tax measure that I can say with 100% confidence that I will support and can campaign for. On the other side of things, there's sort of like around the edges type of revenue enhancement opportunities like billboards we've talked about. Doing a comprehensive study of our developer fees and looking at impact fees. And I think that there are opportunities there. I think like there are many ways that we can find efficiencies still organizationally, and we continue to do that. I mean, I come from a Chinese and Jewish family. There's no one that's tighter with the dollars than me. So I really do understand the value of every single dollar. And my grandfather told me, the best way to keep money in the bank is to not spend it, right? And so I think that there's the saving on the expenditure side, and then there's also the earning side. And one of the things is that I strongly consider with every single development that comes to us that we were thinking about during CONCAR was a trade-off between the for sale opportunity and for 73 units and then 200 rental units. And at the end of the day, 200 rental units actually generated more property tax. So that was a strong consideration for me.
So,
Diane?
yeah, so let's talk a little bit about revenue enhancement. We are exploring the possibility of a billboard. I mean, my God, we are on the corner. We are in the intersection of 101 and 92. I mean, the thousands upon thousands of cars that go by there every day is something that we really, as a council, we've been exploring, and we will continue to explore that. So that may be a revenue generator. Certainly not huge that's going to move the needle, but it's something we need to look at, certainly. We had explored this idea of the property transfer tax. We're not there. We're not there at this moment in time, certainly, but stay tuned. We just don't know. And it may be that there are certain thresholds that we tie it into. I know San Francisco has done that so that it didn't necessarily apply to residential transfers, but we're not there right now. On the spending side, one of the hardest parts of being on city council is labor negotiations, and concession bargaining at times like this is very difficult. But I will say probably in the end run, the unsung heroes of our budget and maintaining a balanced budget will in all likelihood be the San Mateo staff, the people who work so hard every day. And we're going to be talking with them to see how they can help us maintain our budget. We want to keep everyone employed, and those are going to be some very tricky times and some very hard discussions. I've done them before, and I know it's probably the toughest part of the job. I cannot tell you anything different.
Okay. Okay, do we have any questions, Pauline or Cheryl, in our box?
There are no questions in the chat, Alan.
Somebody asked
So,
me,
okay.
Alan,
Yes.
somebody asked what the chamber's stance is on the various measures. So would you like to report on that?
I'll let you do that.
Okay, Rovi, help me here because I know that you're up to date. So Measure W, we just endorsed that.
For
And
sure. Measure
yes,
W is important, and we heard about it this week, and we agreed as a board that we should support it. Cheryl?
yes. And then I always get the two measures mixed up, but the height limits, the chamber agrees that we should go up and create more housing that way. And
Okay.
do you want to say anything else about that, Alan?
Well, I shouldn't say anything about it. We'll let Rovi talk about it because I basically was one of the people who originated that. Rovi?
Well, I'll step in here. We as a board supported. Well, we're looking to support Measure R and oppose Measure Y. But I don't believe we voted yet as a board on those measures. So that shall come out. But since we've got our candidates here, let's go back to some questions that we had ready to go for them. Diane had mentioned a little bit about the city staff, and this is kind of a question that has a little bit to do with that. One of the things that we see is there's just so many competing interests at City Hall. You've got NIMBY versus YIMBY, you've got kind of the spending folks versus the folks who want to cut services and save money, and then you've got staff recommendations versus, public comment and public opinion. How will you as a council member work with these competing interests, and kind of what will be your kind of guiding stance when it comes to these competing interests, because there are so many, and so many crucial ones like the ones I mentioned. And I'll start with I believe it's Diane's turn to start.
Okay. So oftentimes when I talk about what I love most about being on the city council, it is the challenge of participating in city government of a city that's comprised of 110,000 people with very disparate points of view. And you're right, Matt, they all converge on 25th Avenue there at City Hall. And it's the part about the job that I love the most because A, you got to be a great listener, and you have to listen with a tremendous amount of empathy. And I really feel like I was meant to do this job. I've had a lot of different, career paths. I've been an attorney, nonprofit. And I feel like this job is an amalgamation of all those things for me. And that skill set of listening with empathy, being able to have sort of a 360-degree view of issues. And then what I do anyway, and how I approach the job is that I try to find the sweet spot of where I can, find a little compromise here, find a little compromise there, and we cobble together something that most of the time, I would say like 99.9% of the time, is reflective of the entire community's preferences as a whole. And I'm so proud of that. I'm trying to think of instances where it's happened, but I don't want to single anyone out. But that is the challenge of the job. It is the beauty of the job when you can bring people together and really listen and find that sweet spot of where those compromises are, because ultimately it ends up to be reflective of the community as a whole. This beautiful community of 110,000 people with such diverse points of view. I don't want to get too, mushy about it, but I love it. Like I get up in the morning. This is what gets me out of bed in the morning. Like I dig it. Cheryl told me to stop, so I'm going to stop.
Great, thank you, Diane. We'll go with Lisa next.
Great, thank you, Matt. I think my whole life I have been known as a connector and a collaborator. Whether it's personally or professionally, the way I've built success is by bringing people and groups of very different ideologies, persuasions together, and really trying to listen and understand what are their priority needs? Because at the end of the day, if you can satisfy a group or an individual's really top 1 or 2 needs, the fact that 5, 6, and 7 don't get satisfied somehow is digestible. So it's really trying to pull it apart and then bring it all back together again. I also find that it's really important to be transparent. And that is something I think we need more of and more of and more of every day. Because you have to understand, we all have friends, we all have backgrounds, we're all going to be influenced, for human beings. But you have to understand where the connections are to try and tamp down any undue influence, so that we're really looking at, number one, what are the dollars and cents impacts of a particular initiative? Number 2, who is being benefited by it? And number 3, who's being hurt by it? So I really think that those 2 things together put it in a situation where it makes some sense. And then I also say, let's bring the diverse groups together and ask them what they think. Because once again, people are going to come up with ideas when they're together that they haven't thought of on their own. So thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Lisa. And Emma.
Well, thank you for the question. It's a great question, because I think it's the question of leadership, right? And what is our style? What do we bring to leadership in these moments? And so I have a story that I think is worth sharing, which is the Mid-Penn Project. So back in 2018, when I was the president of my neighborhood association, North Central, we took a strong position in support of that project being 100% affordable. CNA, the other neighborhood, Central neighborhood, took a position supporting a 30% affordable project, and did not want to see the 100% affordable project that was adjacent to their neighborhood. And when we joined the council, this project has gone through incredible evolutions. And some of the decision points that were so key to increasing the number of homes from 164 to 250, right? That's a significant increase, which was only allowable by increased density and height. That was a rub, again, for the Central neighborhood, whereas the North Central neighborhood said, we need the affordable housing and let's do this. I'd fast forward to the end of the day, some of the staunch opposers actually got there. Their positions evolved, and they ended up, expressing their concerns, those concerns being addressed, and ultimately getting behind this project. So the way that I see this happening is through dialogue, through conversation, through elevating concerns, lifting up the rug, talking about what's not working, talking about how we can fix it all together. And today we have a great project. It's 100% clean. It'll provide 225 homes for our San Mateans.
Okay, great.
I think what we ought to do is, since I always like to end meetings on time or even early, we had 1 minute as a wrap up for each candidate.
Alan, we do have one question. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, we do. Okay. Okay, go on.
It's from Stacy. What will you do to address racism in all forms?
Okay, and I think we would be starting now with who?
Sorry. Lisa.
Lisa.
Thank you, Stacy, for that question. I think it's one that is at the heart of everything we're doing. And I think we really need to understand, number one, that we're talking about systemic racism that has impacted our community, our society, our institutions from hundreds of years ago through today. San Mateo itself is an example, and the way we are zoned and what has happened, we have to acknowledge that. Number two, we have to acknowledge that the system has to get changed, not just individuals. And we need to look at ways that government, from our government all the way up, how it changes things, how that impacts access to affordable housing, how that impacts economic development opportunities. And then number three, as we're having these discussions, we need to make sure that the people who have been most impacted by the systemic racism are leading our discussions. So it is really a community-wide discussion, but we need to let other people take the lead and sit back and be supportive and be allies when we have to. So I think that the city itself has already started to do a lot of very good things, not just to be, to fight against racism, but to be anti-racist. It comes to all of us understanding ourselves and everything we do, where our biases are and how can we consciously change. Then looking at everything we're doing as a city government. Who are we supporting? How are we including more diverse representation on our boards and commissions? What are we doing for economic development? What are we doing for healthcare? All of this, one by one, we need to have those discussions, and we need to make tangible progress and then measure it and make sure that it doesn't go away because it's not the flavor of the month anymore, but it's the way we do everything.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Amo?
Thank you for asking this question. I think that even a year ago, this wouldn't have been asked. And so, this is a real sign of progress. So I'm so proud to say that I helped co-author our Black Lives Matter resolution in partnership with our Black community leaders and our Police Officers Association. And it was also signed by the chair of our Police Activities League and multiple faith leaders as well. And so that effort, I think, is a shining example of the goal that we have to take an anti-racist approach in our policy and our practices and our processes. So that is probably the most all-encompassing anti-racist policy that exists on the peninsula, and that was just enacted this year. So this is not something that that is a checkbox for me. It's not something that I think about every now and then. It's something that is in my bones and that I've done my entire career and have been working on very proactively. So the way the strategies that are entailed taking an anti-racist approach is making sure that we lift all voices, that all voices are included, that we have a representative and diverse leadership at every level. I'm talking about the neighborhood associations being inclusive. I'm talking about the boards and commissions being inclusive. I'm talking about diversification in our own police officers and police force and public safety, and then also on the council, right? And then furthermore, it's putting the road to the rubber and committing to equitable distribution of resources, things like the Workers Resource Center that changes lives. Those decision points, resourcing those ideas that help people that need it.
Thank you very much. Has everyone answered that question?
No, Diane, it's Diane's turn.
Diane.
How can you forget me? So I concur that this has really been a time of listening, and we need to continue to listen, because nothing is going to change unless we take a moment and we step back and we really absorb what other people have gone through. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. But then I want to talk about what a city can do and how we can be equitable with resources. I'm enormously proud that the city is using the King Center right this very minute as we speak as a learning hub for our most vulnerable population. That's something we can do to provide equity. And it's tremendously important, tremendously important. The other thing is, let's talk about the library. The library has done so much to raise money, to have Chromebooks, to bridge the digital divide. And that's not only for our youth, that's for adults as well. So these are things, tangible things that a city can do. I'm here to listen. We've evaluated and looked at our police budget and what it entails. We're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue dialogue. Stacy, let's talk about what the private sector has done while we're at it. I mean, when Kaiser has a day of service and we're out there painting at the shelter, those are important things and important ways that we can bring the private sector into the fold as well. Let's continue to work together on it. It is a process. It is not a done deal. not by any stretch of the imagination. And I think as a city, you maintain your ears open and then you see what you can do to level the playing field. At least that's where I'm coming from on it.
Thank you, Diane. I think we're going to start with Diane now, and we're going to go back to the 60-second wrap up. So Diane, would you like to wrap up?
Sure. Well, of course, you'll hear the first words out of my mouth. Thank you to the Chamber. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your dedication, not only to being involved in the political process when there's an election, but for all that you do day in and day out, year in, year out, to maintain the viability, the economic viability of the City of San Mateo. It's near and dear to all of us. You won't hear any different from any council member running or any candidate running for office. I mean, we're in this because we are passionate about this community. And I appreciate the passion and the level of discourse that the Chamber brings, not only with respect to its broader membership, but also to the Public Policy Committee. I think you guys do a super job, and I'm grateful for it. I really am, because democracy is about participation, folks, and you're doing it, and you make us a stronger community for it. One of the things I didn't mention that I'd just like to mention real quick was I was really proud of the city and its B Street, September Nights on B Street. That was a real effort, foray by the city to get out there and see what we can do to enhance the livelihood, at least of our downtown. And hopefully post-COVID, we can continue those sorts of efforts, and I think it will do a lot. I was remiss to not bring it up before, and I apologize. But anyway, enough about me. What about you? Thank you so much for all you do. I love doing these, and let's continue the discussion.
Lisa?
Okay. Well, first off, let me add my thanks to everyone for everything that was done to put today on and for ongoing partnership. Local governments don't control global market trends, but they can create welcome environments for business built on partnership and the commitment to making economic development as attractive as possible and regulatory environments as predictable and streamlined as possible. I think our discussion this morning demonstrates why it's so important who the individuals are on City Council. We don't know what the big issues will be in 6 months. Just take a look at COVID. But we need individuals who are balanced and who can look at all aspects of an issue to find a solution that really will solve a problem that's being addressed. And I believe I'm one of those balanced individuals. I'm passionate about revitalizing our economy, but I also want to make sure we have policies and programs that will actually help our local businesses as well as our residents. I have the business experience to understand business needs and work in real time with you to find solutions. I'm making small business recovery a central part of my campaign and raising actual money and awareness at all my events. So I've been successful in my personal and professional career because, as I've said, I bring diverse groups of people together to find common ground that leads to common success. That's how I would lead as a council member, and I look forward to working with the Chamber and local businesses to revitalize our economy, and I would be honored to earn your votes. Thank you.
Amo?
Well, thank you again. I echo all the appreciation for not just holding this event, but for the tremendous work that you've been doing. In addition to running your own businesses, helping to save as many businesses as we can by throwing life preservers into the ocean. That's the work that you've been doing, and we're all better for it. So thank you so much. I think that, I'll just end with the story of my path to council, which was really being called to serve. I was asked, I was tapped. I never saw this for myself. I was never aiming for it. It literally was not on the menu. And I believe that community members want to see leadership, city leadership, reflective of our community, geographically and demographically. And what I bring to this moment, in addition to my public health background, which seems pretty relevant these days, and my business background, my nonprofit executive background, and the support of so many of our esteemed leaders. I really believe that I bring an approach that's about partnership, that's about collaboration and about transparency. I will tell you exactly what I think. I will listen hard and learn with you. And I'm here to do the work alongside you as a partner.
Well, I'd like to thank you so much for coming and speaking with us. And I'd like to thank you three for your service, because it is a sacrifice and it's really important to the community that we have people like yourselves willing to participate and willing to help lead our community. We need it, especially today. So I'd like to thank you very much. And now what I'd like to do is I'd like to take Cheryl, our CEO and timekeeper, and let her make the chamber's announcements and tell you what's going on.
Thank you, Alan. And the candidates, boy, people are going to have a hard choice, because I think the three of you really have shown great leadership, and I just love the fact that we have three women. You know, I know, yay! So the most exciting thing that I want to report is that the Chamber is planning on opening a Business Action Center to help small businesses recover from this COVID pandemic that we're having. And we actually have the office space and the desks. And what we need to do is raise money for the resources for the people that have the professional knowledge in order to help these businesses. I've tapped into some of my business leaders, and many people are willing to donate their time and really want to help the businesses. So we are coming up with a plan where we will help with marketing, public relations, business plans, financing, and they will be able to make appointments and come to the Chamber and get, you know, help for free. So I'm very excited about that. How are we going to fund it? Well, we need to have some fun. We've, you know, yesterday was 6 months for me that I've been, you know, holed up at home. So we are going to have a virtual talent show. And we are just finalizing the rules and regulations and our artwork now. And so we will be sending out the applications from ages from 1 to 99 are able to participate. So we're looking for singers, dancers, jugglers, comedians, you know, any kind of talent. And once we have the applications and the 3-minute videos that are required, we will have a team review those, select the top 10, and then they will go to a final night on January 22nd, where we will have a watch party at the Marriott. And we will have party boxes available, etc. So that is going to help us fund this Business Action Center. And I do have to mention Lisa Nash is having a fundraising event for her birthday, and she is donating 25% of the proceeds for this Business Action Center. So with that, I want to thank you again. You guys are awesome, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, and let's all get out and vote. It's very important. And tell everyone you know to get out and vote. Okay?
All right.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.